They showed up with a notarized letter and a bottle of wine. I poured the wine down the sink and handed the letter back unopened. That was 3 months ago. And every morning since, I wake up and feel nothing but clean. Let me go back to the beginning, because the beginning matters. I was 17 when I told my parents I was seeing someone they didn't approve of. Not a criminal, not a dropout, just a guy who grew up on the wrong side of the county line, whose father worked at a plant that my father's firm had nearly shut down in a labor dispute. His name was Danny. He had a gap between his front teeth, and he always smelled like sawdust and Irish Spring. And he made me laugh harder than anyone I'd ever met. My mother sent me a found all the way mothers in our neighborhood found out about everything. Through someone else's mother, at a charity luncheon, over cold shrimp and warm white wine. She came home and sat across from me at the kitchen island, and she didn't yell. That was the thing about my mother. She never yelled. She just got very, very quiet, and her voice dropped to this register that I can only describe as surgical. "You understand what this looks like," she said. It wasn't a question. My father handled it differently. He called Danny's father and told him to keep his son away from me. I found out because Danny told me, his voice flat, his jaw tight, looking at the ground when he said it. He was humiliated. I was furious. But we were 17 and we thought love was enough armor against things like that. It wasn't. 2 months later, my parents sat me down and told me I had a choice. Stop seeing Danny, commit fully to the trajectory they had planned. The prep school finishing program, the right college, the right connections, or I could find somewhere else to live. I thought they were bluffing. They weren't. I remember the exact texture of that night. It was October, one of those Ohio nights that turn cold so suddenly you're not ready for it. And I was standing on our front porch with a duffel bag and my backpack and my winter coat half-zipped, and my mother watching from the window. Not standing in the doorway, watching from the window. Like I was already a stranger she didn't quite recognize. I stayed with my friend's family for 3 weeks. Then Danny and I found a room in a house split 4 ways, with people we barely knew. We were juniors in high school. I kept going to school. I don't know how, looking back. I just kept going. Danny got a job at a hardware store on weekends. I picked up shifts at a diner 3 mornings before school. We scraped. We split groceries down to the last dollar. I ate a lot of peanut butter and I stopped mentioning it to anyone because I didn't want pity, I wanted to get through. My parents sent a letter that spring through my aunt. It said they would welcome me back if I came alone. No mention of Danny. Just, if you're ready to make better choices, the door is open. I read it twice and set it on the counter and never responded. That summer, I got my GED a year early. I tested out of 2 college courses through a community program. Danny and I both turned 18, and I remember we bought a cheap cake from the grocery store and ate it standing at the kitchen counter at midnight, laughing at something I can't even remember now. I remember the feeling though, precarious and free and absolutely terrified, and somehow still okay. I got a scholarship, not a full one but enough. I deferred a semester to save money and then I went. Danny drove me to campus in a pickup truck that overheated twice on the interstate. We stood on the sidewalk outside my dorm and he held my face in his hands and said, "I'll come every weekend." And he meant it. He did for a while. College was the first time I understood what it meant to work hard and have it actually move the needle. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building something. I studied accounting because I was good with numbers and because I wanted to understand exactly how money worked, how people protected it, how it could be leveraged. All the things my parents assumed I'd never need to know because someone would just handle it for me someday. I graduated in 3 years, taking summer courses. I passed my CPA exam on the first attempt. I got hired at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, and within 18 months I was being poached by a larger one in Chicago. Danny and I tried to hold on through all of it. He was proud of me. Genuinely proud, the uncomplicated kind. But distance is a slow erosion. He didn't want to leave Ohio. I couldn't stop wanting more. There was no villain in what happened between us. Just 2 people who had grown in different directions from the same frightened starting point. We ended things on a Tuesday, quietly, over the phone. He said, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I cried for 3 days. Then I packed 2 suitcases and moved to Chicago. I want to be honest about the years that followed, because I think it's easy, in these kinds of stories, to skip over the middle and go straight from suffering to success, like there was some clean montage in between. There wasn't. I worked constantly. I had good years and grinding years. I had an apartment I loved, and then a smaller one when the economy did something ugly for a while, and I had to recalibrate. I had 2 relationships that meant something and ended without catastrophe, which felt like its own kind of adulthood. I made friends who became family. A kind I got to choose. I bought a condo at 31. Not a showpiece. A 2-bedroom in Andersonville with original tile in the bathroom, and a radiator that clanked every winter, and a window in the kitchen that got exactly 45 minutes of afternoon sun. I loved it so much it startled me sometimes. I had built a life. Quietly, without applause, without a safety net, and without my parents' money or name or connections. Everything I had made. I hadn't spoken to my mother or father in 14 years. I thought about them occasionally, the way you think about weather from a trip you took a long time ago. Not with longing, just as a fact of the landscape I had traveled through. Then my aunt called. She's my mother's older sister, and she and I had kept an occasional thread of contact over the years. A birthday text, a check-in at Christmas, nothing heavy. She was the one who'd taken me in for those 3 weeks at 17, and I think we both understood that what she'd done was an act of quiet loyalty. She could never fully say out loud. She called on a Wednesday evening in February, and her voice had that particular careful quality that meant she was choosing her words before speaking them. "Your parents have been asking about you," she said. I waited. "Your father had a mild cardiac episode in December. He's fine, he's recovered. But I think it recalibrated some things for them." "Okay," I said. "They know you're in Chicago. They know you're doing well." "How do they know that?" A pause. "Your mother hired someone. A few years ago. I only found out recently." "I'm sorry." So that answered the question I'd never asked, how they knew where to find me. They'd had someone watching, or tracking really. I sat with that for a moment. It didn't feel like love to me. It felt like surveillance. "They want to reach out," my aunt said. "Then they can reach out," I said. "I'm not stopping them. They wanted to know if you'd be open to it. I'm not going to tell them I'm open to something I haven't heard yet." She understood. She always understood. "I'll let them know," she said. The letter arrived in March. Handwritten, my mother's handwriting, on their personal stationery. The cream-colored kind, with their initials at the top, which I used to think was the height of elegance when I was a child. It was 4 paragraphs. The first one said they had never stopped thinking about me. The second one said they understood they had made mistakes. The third one described my father's health scare in some detail, the kind of detail that was clearly meant to create urgency. The fourth one said they hoped we could meet, and that they had something they wanted to discuss, something that concerned my future and theirs together. I read it twice, very carefully. I noticed what it didn't say. It didn't say we were wrong. It said mistakes were made. It didn't say we hurt you. It said we understand this was painful. Passive voice throughout, like the harm had occurred without an agent. Like the harm was weather. I showed it to my closest friend Quincy over dinner that week. He read it and set it down and said, without looking up, "They want something." I thought so too. I wrote back. 1 paragraph. I said I'd received their letter. I said I was open to a conversation. I suggested a coffee place I liked in Lincoln Square. Neutral ground, public, easy to leave. I said Saturday at 11, and gave them 3 options for date. They chose the first one. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown in ways that changed the scale of things. My father looked tired, which was new. He had always had that quality particular to men who have never really been inconvenienced, a kind of buoyancy that sat oddly on him now, deflated. We ordered coffee. We talked around the edges for a while. My mother asked about my work. I told her plainly, without performing modesty or pride. My father talked about his health. I listened. Then my mother reached into her bag and put an envelope on the table. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she said. "About legacy, about what we leave behind." She slid the envelope toward me. "Your father's estate plan has been revised. We wanted you to know that you're included. The attorney can walk you through the full details, but we wanted you to have this." I didn't touch the envelope. "Can I ask you something first?" I said. My mother looked at me. My father looked at his coffee. "When you sent me out of the house at 17, I said, what did you think would happen to me?" Silence. "I want to know if you thought about it," I said. "Did you think, she'll be cold, she might not eat, she has nowhere to go? Did any of that go through your minds? Or did you think I would just come back in a few days and everything would reset?" My mother's hands moved to her napkin. "We thought. I'm asking what you actually thought," I said. "Not what you wish you'd thought. Not a reframe. What was in your head that night?" My father said very quietly, "We thought you'd come back." I nodded. I picked up my coffee. I let the silence sit. "The thing is," I said, "I didn't need you to come through for me in the end. I needed you to come through for me at the beginning, and you didn't. I figured out the rest on my own. I'm not saying that to punish you. I'm saying it so you understand that what's in that envelope isn't something I need. It never could have been the point." My mother's eyes were wet. My father had the expression of a man encountering a consequence he'd thought he'd outrun. "I don't know what's possible between us," I said. "I'm not going to make you a promise today in either direction. But I need you to understand something. I'm not going to be close with people who can't look me in the eye and say what they actually did. Not because I'm holding a grudge. Because I've spent 14 years building a life that's built on honesty, and I don't know how to let anything in that isn't." I left the envelope on the table. I paid for my own coffee. That was 8 months ago. My mother called twice after that. We've talked, really talked, with more honesty than I would have thought either of us capable of at that table. It's slow, it's careful. Some weeks it feels like something is actually shifting, and some weeks it feels like we're just two people who are very politely maintaining a fiction of progress. My father and I have exchanged exactly 4 texts. They were brief. They were a start. I don't have a tidy conclusion for you. I'm not going to tell you that love healed everything because it didn't, because you can't heal something that was never properly named. I'm not going to tell you that the money didn't matter to them, because I think it did, at least partly, in the beginning. What I can tell you is this. I walked into that coffee shop alone, and I walked out alone, and I drove home, and I made soup, and I called Quincy, and I slept soundly. Not because everything was resolved. Because I had said the true thing out loud, and I hadn't been swallowed by it. My aunt came to visit in October. We sat in my kitchen with the afternoon light coming through that window for exactly 45 minutes, and she told me she was proud of me, and I told her she was the reason I'd known, even at 17, that some people could be trusted. She waved it off the way she waves off everything. But I meant it. The condo still clanks in the winter. I still love it. I made this life myself, in the dark, 1 month at a time, and no one can take that from me. Not an inheritance, not a notarized letter, not a bottle of wine, especially not a bottle of wine.